Good old Professor Cha is telling Hajun about the festival that's happening near her place, which she has already gone to with her family. The festival's main attraction is the pink mully grass, which her kids loved. She added that a bunch of couples also went there, enjoying the festival while holding hands and doing all those cringy things that couples do. Hajun tried playing dumb, but the professor already saw through him. Instead, she just advised him how it's a good place to set the right mood. This is boomer wisdom right here. And so, one fine day after that conversation with his colleague, Hajun brought Shihyeon to the said festival. Only Hajun didn't expect that the place would be jam-packed. Anyways, while Hajun is feeling a bit uncomfortable with a number of fellow visitors in their midst, our Shihyeon is on full alert against possible assassins that might appear, determined to stay close to Hajun to make sure he's safe. Suddenly, Shihyeon found himself being pulled by Hajun. The two of them stopped in front of the pink grass Professor Cha was talking about. Shihyeon was speechless, although Hajun immediately interpreted this as Shihyeon not being interested. However, before Hajun could confirm this, a trio of young ladies suddenly asked Shihyeon if he could take their photo. Shihyeon tries to ask Hajun if it's all right. Hajun tells him he'll wait and takes his bag. And so Shihyeon takes the picture, ensuring Hajun is within his periphery. To Hajun's surprise, Shihyeon takes the task seriously. Well, even if he fails as an agent, at least he's a hardworking photographer. As Hajun saw Shihyeon smile at the ladies, something stirred inside him. As if on cue, someone near him suddenly expressed how pretty the pink grasses were, somehow voicing out what he was feeling, seeing Shihyeon's innocent expression. Not long after, Shihyeon returned to his side and took his bag. Hajun then commented on how thoughtful he was to the ladies, even though they were strangers. Shihyeon just explained that since the ladies made an effort to go to the festival, they should at least preserve the memory beautifully. To lighten the mood, Shihyeon joked that perhaps Hajun was upset because he left Hajun alone, which probably made him feel awkward. To Shihyeon's surprise, Hajun took it seriously, commenting on how they were on a date. Therefore, Shihyeon should refrain from smiling at anyone, whether it's a guy or a girl. What the fork? Dude, cringy much? Safe to say, the atmosphere between them became awkward after that, although in a good way. Hajun found his actions childish shortly after, but it was too late for regrets. And so, the date continued like that until it was time to go home. On the drive home, Hajun asks Shihyeon if he enjoyed their outing. Shihyeon said he did, and he had no idea it was so close to where they lived. He then admitted that he didn't really like autumn viewing because it reminded him of the coming winter. Then again, it was still nice to see autumn flowers. Suddenly, Hajun tells Shihyeon that they should look at flowers in the spring, taking Shihyeon aback. And when Hajun repeats it, he notices how Shihyeon seems uncertain. Well, of course, he is. After all, there's no way he'll still be with Hajun during spring, right? At most, he'll be out of the picture after 2 weeks, after he sees Hajun's father at the conference, and that means that will be the end of their relationship as well. Despite such a reality, however, Shihyeon still agreed to it. His expression as he did, however, made Hajun think that perhaps Shihyeon didn't mean for their relationship to last for so long. That's what you get for being cringy. Anyways, as they were about to reach their house, Hajun noticed someone standing in front of the gate and took a detour. He then parked the car in an alleyway and told Shihyeon to wait for him there, after which he walked towards the person waiting for him outside his house. As a greeting, he told them they should have called him beforehand so they didn't have to wait long. The other person turned out to be a lady who suddenly slapped Hajun in response to the greeting, and Shihyeon witnessed it all while hidden somewhere nearby. Hajun is seated in front of the gate. He remembers his conversation with his mother earlier, where she scolded him for being an unfilial son and told him how much the parents of the girl's family insulted her. Stressed, Hajun was contemplating giving Yoonjae a call as he tried to light his cig, but then someone offered him a canned drink and told him to put it next to his face. Shihyeon explained how he took the can from his icebox in his car. Hajun asked him if he saw everything, and Shihyeon didn't deny it. As Hajun took the offered can, he apologized for showing such a thing to him. Instead of commenting, Shihyeon just asked him if he wanted to rest inside the house or go for a walk instead. And so, they went for a walk with Shihyeon in front. He followed Shihyeon until they reached a place that surprised Hajun as their walk stopped in the park. Shihyeon explained how he used to live in the neighborhood when he was young, and he remembered how he used to go to that spot whenever he was upset. It's the highest place in the area, and for some reason, whenever he went for a walk, he always ended up coming there. It was also a place where the best sunset could be seen, so he would always come there to empty his thoughts. Hajun then asks Shihyeon if he will not ask him about what happened. Shihyeon responds that Hajun will eventually tell him if he wants to discuss it himself. Without another preamble, Hajun starts narrating how he broke his engagement not too long ago. He was actually in a relationship with a woman before he met Shihyeon, although it's not like they really knew each other. Plus, their engagement was actually arranged for them as well. The lady seems to be the daughter of a doctor who owns a hospital. But despite being engaged, he had never seen her face before, and all he was given was a folder containing her credentials and contacts. Cursing poor Shadow in his head for a piece of information that was so different from what he was given, Shihyeon asks Hajun how the arrangement happened. Hajun then explains that it sprung from his mother's stubbornness, after being under constant anxiety due to his father, who rarely comes home to them. His father was also a university professor. When he was not teaching, he participated in many subcontracted research projects. Some even looked like international projects, although Hajun had no idea where his old man was now. In fact, all his life, the most he spent with his father was a month at best. Hearing this, Shihyeon concluded that Hajun's father started acting like that when he was recruited to research reinforced materials. He hid all that from his family, for him to protect them. Hajun then added that her mother's state is probably because he's an unreliable son as well. Since he was quite the rebel in his youth, for some reason, he would always get into fights, and before he knew it, he already found himself in a bloody fist fight with his schoolmates. Plus, he's also not the type to back down whenever someone provokes him. He was just angry all the time. Well, we've all been there. I did a bunch of bad things in my youth myself. Anyways, hearing that, Shihyeon now understands why Hajun immediately resorted to using his fists when he first confronted Muno. As for Hajun, he was thankful that none of his fights became a permanent record. Otherwise, he wouldn't be a professor now. That said, back then, if it weren't for meeting Yoonjae, he'd probably be in a worse situation by now. Speaking of Yoonjae, Shihyeon remembers that according to the report given to him, the professor has been Hajun's friend since high school. Although, according to Yoonjae, that was not when they first met, making him wonder what it could mean. On the other hand, Shihyeon asks Hajun if the two of them have been close ever since. Hajun responds that, instead of being close, it's more like he had leaned a lot on Yoonjae, and that he's the only one he could rely on. Whoa, for some reason, I felt the hurt that Shihyeon felt if he really felt it, and for good reasons. Later that evening, as Hajun was about to turn in for the night, he called out to Shihyeon and thanked him for listening before bidding him good night. Not long after, Shihyeon was in his bed, intending to sleep, but it seemed like he couldn't. So he went to Hajun's room where he saw the young professor reading. Shihyeon asked him if he was reading for his research paper, to which Hajun then explained that he was reading poems by John Keats. He sometimes did this whenever he couldn't sleep to calm him down. Hajun then asks Shihyeon what he's doing there. Before answering, however, Shihyeon takes off Hajun's glasses. Right then, Shihyeon realizes why he told Hajun he wanted to stay by his side before. It was because Shihyeon knew deep down that Hajun was hurting. As for Hajun's inquiry, Shihyeon just said that he couldn't sleep either. And you know what comes next, right? Morning came and Shihyeon woke up by himself in bed. He heard clattering outside the room and concluded that Hajun was in the middle of making breakfast. As for himself, he decided that he should take a shower. Shihyeon was just about to brush his teeth when he saw his reflection in the mirror. He was taken aback by the number of love bites and marks all over his upper body. Remembering what happened the night before, he reflected on the fact that he wasn't the type to enjoy pre-wanking plays. In fact, since doing it in the car, they had not done it until last night, making him wonder if perhaps it's because their relationship changed. Just thinking about it made him uncomfortable, so he decided to take a shower to calm himself down. Soon after, Shihyeon is already in the middle of showering when Hajun knocks on the bathroom door. He asks Shihyeon if it's all right that he shaves right next to him while he's showering, to which Shihyeon agrees. Okay, how they've already seen everything between them. But dude, you should still lock the freaking door when you're in the bathroom. Anyway, as the two of them did their thing, Shihyeon soon started checking out all the marks and bites he had that seemed to have extended even down to his legs. After peeking at Hajun to see if he was looking his way, Shihyeon reflected on how some of those marks he remembered happening, and others he couldn't. Shihyeon is in the middle of regretting letting Hajun do it to him when the water suddenly stops pouring. Turns out, Hajun had entered the shower stall and turned off the water. He then asked Shihyeon if he thought Hajun was peeking at him while he showered. When Shihyeon didn't deny it, Hajun denied the fact. After all, according to him, it's not his hobby to peek at someone while they take a shower. Then again, if that someone happens to be his lover, it's not like it really matters. Suddenly, Hajun started tracing the marks and bites he had left in Shihyeon, making the latter flinch, after which he whispered to Shihyeon that there was no point in checking them, since they were all over anyway, which just proved, in the end, that Hajun was indeed peeking at Shihyeon while he was showering, and this time, Hajun didn't deny it. As if it's some sort of signal, the two of them start kissing, and Hajun takes off his shirt. When Hajun's hand comes dangerously near Shihyeon's black hole, the latter points out how he just finished showering. Hajun then tells him to let him do it, since that was his intention from the start. See, this is why you should have locked the freaking door. Then again, it's not like Shihyeon really minded, even though he still hadn't fully recovered from last night's bedroom exercise. Hajun comments that Shihyeon is tighter than he was last night, and Shihyeon points out that it was because of what Hajun did previously, which is why it's still swollen. Reflecting on it, Hajun apologizes, but that's it, because he doesn't look like he'll be stopping preparing Shihyeon's black hole just yet. Once Shihyeon produces some tartar sauce, Hajun turns him around to face him, and they start kissing again. The preparation continues until Hajun determines that Shihyeon is ready for him. Hajun doesn't even slow down when he starts doing the deed with Shihyeon backed against the wall. Suddenly, Hajun leaves another bite mark near his lover's neck. He then tells Shihyeon that he belongs to him, putting emphasis on the word mine. Hajun said it with so much determination that for a second, Shihyeon wondered if Hajun was, in fact, really in love with him. Meanwhile, we see a silhouette of a man watching the news regarding the police investigation into the disappearance of a professor from Dongju University. It seems that his wallet was found inside his car. Therefore, it doesn't look like it's a case of robbery. In a certain bedroom, Uno is busy doing the humpy-pumpy with someone. After some time, he instructs this someone to answer whenever he calls him by a certain nickname. And can you guess what the nickname is? That's right. It's Candy. Now I'm starting to feel bad for this blonde hunky. Not long after, we see Shihyeon walking in the hallway of a hotel, heading for room 1603. He was thinking how unfair it was that Muno lived in a hotel when he was housed in a fire hazard student dorm. Suddenly, someone in a hood went past him in a hurry and barely missed him. Shihyeon wondered who it was, but didn't really think much of it. Instead, he just went straight to knock on Yuno's room. It didn't take long for the blonde agent to answer the door and amicably welcome Shihyeon. And by amicably, I mean Yuno's weapon dangling for the world to see. Although Shihyeon is clearly uncomfortable being welcomed with Uno's banana, and while he's in his birth suit, the latter acts as if it's no big deal at all. It just so happens that a hotel employee is about to pass by their door, so Shihyeon is quick to kick Uno toward the room, surprising the poor employee, but hopefully he doesn't report them. Anyways, once inside, Shihyeon immediately demanded that Uno put something on, unless he wanted to go to jail. In return, Uno jokingly said that if he does get arrested, then perhaps Shihyeon can testify that the two of them are just doing a play. Then again, we all know he really does want it. As expected, Shihyeon didn't take him seriously. Instead, he just went straight to business and asks for news about Professor Lim. Uno explains that not even the police have a clue about what happened to him, nor are there any traces in the car or demands from possible kidnappers. Shihyeon accused Uno of slacking off, since the target disappeared the day they searched him, and Uno was supposedly on his tail. The latter good-naturedly responded how he was offended. After all, unlike certain someone, he doesn't mix business with fooling around. In fact, he lost the target during a brief moment that he was with Shihyeon. It seems that the department's director was very upset after Hajun ditched the dinner party. Therefore, he doesn't really know what happened after that. The guilt-tripping worked because Shihyeon didn't say anything back. Also, it seems like Shadow couldn't track the target at that time either, and it's suspicious that they picked that exact moment to get to the professor. So now they have no idea if the brochure they saw is, in fact, for Professor Park or not. That said, Uno warns Candy not to look into the matter himself. Instead, he should ask Shadow to make a recon team and let them do the work. But Shihyeon refuses. After all, this is their only lead, and if they let this go, then who knows? If they can get another one. If Professor Park was really supposed to show up, then their course of action should be to locate where he is and secure him. Anyways, it all boils down to Shihyeon wanting to finish the mission as soon as possible, before he gets more entangled with Hajun. Speaking of entanglements, Shihyeon notices the wrapper of rubber on Uno's bed and warns him about fooling around with the locals before he gets himself into trouble. Uno then asks Shihyeon if he said that because he's worried about Uno. Unfortunately, Shihyeon just said that he's just worried that Uno will drag him down. If ever, Shihyeon goes past Uno and is just about to leave when Uno glances at a love mark on Shihyeon's neck, making him upset. Suddenly, Uno stops Shihyeon and insists that they get a drink first before shoving our MC to the bed. Uno then tells Shihyeon to loosen up and that they should practice their skills together in undercover activities while fooling around. In fact, Uno is confident that he'll be a much better partner than Hajun. Unaffected, Shihyeon passively tells Uno that he doesn't want to jeopardize their business relationship. Seeing an opening, Uno attempts to kiss Shihyeon as he asks him what would happen if they weren't colleagues anymore. In response, Shihyeon tries to kick Uno, but the latter blocks. It was just a distraction, though, since Shihyeon's goal was to grab Uno by the collar of his robe and reverse their positions. With Uno now at a disadvantage, Shihyeon tells him that if they weren't colleagues, there wouldn't be any reason for the two of them to be in the same place. He also once again points out that he's not into men, with Hajun as the exception. Therefore, there's no way that he'd ever sleep with Uno. Thinking that Shihyeon is about to hit him in the face again, Uno asks him not to do it in the same place as last time. Shihyeon didn't do such a thing, however, and just commented on how Uno had been acting very strangely lately. Uno brushes it off with a lame excuse and instead gives Shihyeon a flip phone. It was found in the hotel room, where Professor Park was last seen, and although it was wiped clean, Uno managed to recover an unsent voicemail. He added that although what's in it is irrelevant to their mission, Shihyeon should still listen to it. Shihyeon thanked him and said that he'd be leaving, although not before Uno was advised to take a cold shower. I guess their little moment earlier alerted Uno's weapon, which is evident by Uno's parting warning, as Shihyeon is just about to turn the doorknob. Uno slams on the door right beside Shihyeon and warns him not to flaunt his love marks the next time they see each other if he doesn't want Uno to make a move on him. Uno even emphasized that he was serious about what he said, and Shihyeon couldn't help but believe it. The latter quickly leaves the room, mentally calling Uno a beast, and once again reflects on why he can't work with the dude. Oi, poor dude. Meanwhile, Shihyeon's object of contempt, back in the room, regrets treating Shihyeon as such, although at the same time, he's confident that everything will work out well for him in the end since, as far as he's concerned, things won't work between Shihyeon and Hajun. I get that you're a sore loser. Still, I felt bad for you. But it's a different story if you mess with my ship. It's been a while since the last appearance of Vulture's director, who is now talking to someone on the phone. Everything is going according to plan despite the unexpected variables. Things got a bit out of hand, due to the case of Professor Lim's disappearance, so he tells the person on the other line to be extra careful since their enemies might catch on. That said, they need to take advantage of the opportunity and get rid of that professor since he's on their hit list. Just as the director finished talking on the phone, he arrived in a room where he was supposed to be in a meeting with someone on a 3D monitor. And apparently, the director was already late and didn't give a heads up. The director then made an excuse that he had received unexpected information from his men. Letting it go, the other person then tells him that the time and place of the auction had been arranged. Therefore, the director can't fail to track down the target item on time. The director assures them that there's nothing to worry about since the Vulture has never broken a contract before, and that they already have their best agent working on the case as the trigger. Meanwhile, Shihyeon is just about to leave the house when Hajun calls after him and hands him a lunchbox. Hajun explains that he didn't put a lot of side dishes in it, but he hopes Shihyeon will enjoy it still. Taken aback, Shihyeon said an awkward thanks, which is a bit lacking in Hajun's standard. Hajun quickly reflects on his somewhat disappointed response to Shihyeon's gratitude and tries to brush it off. After all, it's not like he made Shihyeon's lunchbox, so that he'll get praised by him and whatnot. But the reflection wasn't needed, because suddenly Shihyeon gave him a peck on his lips. He even apologizes for the lukewarm response he did earlier. It's just that he was surprised by it, especially since he had never tried making home-cooked meals himself before. Shihyeon's explanation was cut short when Hajun returned the peck, and not just once or twice. The pecking continued until they were in full-on make-out mode. Hajun then put the bag containing Shihyeon's lunch aside, noting that things would not just end in kissing. After all, Shihyeon got into the mood because of it, even though Hajun wasn't making it easier for his lover either, with how his hand was now resting on Shihyeon's bum-bums. Then again, it's not like Hajun is wrong. And so, Shihyeon tells him that he'll just go to the bathroom. Therefore, Hajun should just get ready for work, too. But then Hajun grabs Shihyeon's wrist, expressing his dissatisfaction with Shihyeon's decision to take care of it himself. And so, before we know it, they have moved into the living room, with Hajun enthusiastically helping Shihyeon in his predicament. Shihyeon sat in between Hajun's legs as the latter serviced his lover with his hands. Hajun had Shihyeon bite at his shirt, saying how it would be bad if the tartar sauce got on it. But really, it's just because Hajun wants to play with Shihyeon's nip-nops. After being reprimanded by Shihyeon, Hajun turned his attention to his lover's black hole instead. The two kissed as Hajun's hands played with Shihyeon's black hole and sword until, eventually, Shihyeon reached his peak. As Shihyeon released his tartar sauce, he made such a mess that he still had to change his shirt in the end. What's more, this time, it looks like their little playtime got Hajun in the mood. Only he doesn't want Shihyeon to help him with it. As Hajun helps Shihyeon clean up, he declines Shihyeon's offer to help him deal with it. After all, it would be bad if both of them are late for work. Hajun is pretty sure that he won't be able to stop himself if the two of them start doing more than they already did. Shihyeon is left speechless by Hajun's self-control. By lunchtime later that day, Shihyeon is once again left dumbfounded when he opens the lunchbox Hajun prepared and sees how elaborate it is, not to mention delicious. Anyways, instead of eating lunch with the cleaning ladies, Shihyeon found a little spot on the service stairs so he could eat in private while listening to the voicemail from the phone that Uno gave him. Just to be safe, Shihyeon made a backup copy of the file as well. At first, Shihyeon didn't hear anything and wondered if the message was so quiet that it couldn't be heard by normal means. As he was thinking of sending the file over to Shadow, he finally heard the voice of Hajun's father. Professor Park addresses his son, warning him that he'll probably become a target. Therefore, he should take his mom and look after themselves. Going back to memory lane, we see the young Hajun approaching the park, where he met the young crybaby previously. Unfortunately, there was only a tired old man resting on the bench this time. Hajun eventually turned to head back, resigned that he wouldn't see the boy today, while wondering what he was crying about when he saw him. Suddenly, the boy in question bumped into him and made him fall on his bum. The boy was just about to flee the scene when Hajun held him back, demanding an apology. The boy tried to shake him off, insisting that he was in a hurry, and that's when they heard someone coming to their direction and looking for a boy, promising punishment once they did. Apparently, the said boy was the one they were looking for, by how he flinched at the words. Thinking fast, young Hajun takes off his jacket and covers the young boy's head to hide his face. Without saying anything else, he grabs his hand and flees from the area. The two of them eventually stopped in another park they had not been to before. The young boy suddenly started crying again, scared that he might not be able to get back home. This sent Hajun into a panic. Looking around, he saw a cotton candy stand and went to buy one. The vendor assumed that Hajun was looking after his young brother when he saw the crying boy and sold him an extra big one, for the two of them to share. Young Hajun didn't bother correcting the old man, and just offered the crybaby the cotton candy. The boy accepted and started eating immediately, effectively stopping his crying. When the boy calms down, young Hajun asks him who was chasing him earlier. The boy responded that it was his mom, and that the reason why he ran away was because his mom insisted that they move to a different neighborhood against his will. Hajun then asks where they're moving, so the young boy explains that they'll be moving to a different country to live with a friend. The young boy then stubbornly says that he likes it better when he's still living with his mom and dad, recounting all those times when the three of them do stuff together. He then accuses his mom of forgetting all those memories. In fact, she stopped talking about him when she stopped seeing him. The young boy's words made the young Hajun remember the time when his mom was talking to his dad on the phone and she accused him of forgetting that he still had a family waiting for him. The young boy was startled when young Hajun started crying and insisted that there was no way his mom would have forgotten, even when they were not together anymore. Young Hajun eventually caught himself and reflected on being emotional. He was then taken aback when the shorter young boy before him tried patting his head in his attempt to console young Hajun. For some reason, though, young Hajun slaps the young boy's hand and starts running away. He eventually stops and looks back, worried that the young boy might not actually be able to get home by himself. Back to the present. Hajun wakes up from his little nap on his office desk. Apparently, he fell asleep while grading papers. He then decides to finish them at home, since he is so tired that he even dreams about the past. Hajun glances at the picture frame on his table and blushes a bit. I bet he was blushing because of the picture behind the makeshift family photo. Anyways, when Hajun eventually left his office, Shihyeon was outside waiting for him. It was because Hajun hadn't been checking his phone, so Shihyeon decided to just wait for him there. They eventually started heading home, talking about getting takeout for dinner. In the midst of a trivial chat, Hajun gets a hold of Shihyeon's hand and insists that they hold hands until the elevator. After all, classes should be over, and no one should be around to see them do so. Shihyeon didn't say anything, although he felt his heart beating louder than usual, even though they were just holding hands. Oh. Shihyeon was telling Hajun about his day at work as they ate dinner in a restaurant. He then informs Hajun that he changed shifts and that he'll go to work 2 hours earlier the following Monday. It seems that he's doing a favor for one of the other cleaning ladies who had to go to the hospital that day, and in return, she'll treat him to dinner. Hajun was glad that Shihyeon was good friends with his coworkers and asked him how work was for him. Shihyeon explains that he's doing well and that, except for the chief, everyone compliments his work. The reason why Hajun asked, though, was because he thought that something was bothering Shihyeon at work. After all, it's rare for him to ask Hajun to go drinking. Hajun then asks Shihyeon if there's something he wants to tell him that's making him frustrated. Shihyeon actually did have something he wanted to tell Hajun about how Professor Park tried to warn his son because he was involved in something dangerous. The fact is that he tried to protect himself from danger, but never got to send the message. Then again, it's not like it would make any difference. Instead, Shihyeon asks Hajun to take a shower faster, since they always get to work late. Hajun then points out that they can just wash together to save time, but Shihyeon declines. After all, who knows what Hajun might do if he did? On that note, Shihyeon also tells Hajun not to go to the bathroom when he's showering, having learned his lesson from previous events. Speaking of the voicemail, Shihyeon wonders just how much Professor Park knows. After all, he's already aware that his son might become a target and that someone is coming after him. Perhaps the professor also knows about Vulture. The assassins who came after them are also quiet now, so maybe the professor was trying to warn his son about them. Shihyeon decided to report all of these in the next periodic meeting? Although we also wondered if Uno had already done the honors. Suddenly, the waitress who was supposed to serve them another set of drinks tripped on her feet. Shihyeon was quick to react, though, and avoided the drinks poured to him. Unfortunately, this resulted in Hajun becoming the victim instead. Shihyeon apologized profusely, although Hajun didn't mind so much. At least it wasn't a hot drink. The two of them eventually headed to the restroom, and Shihyeon helped Hajun wipe down his legs. As he did, Shihyeon noticed the scar around Hajun's knee. The latter explained that he got it in a car accident when he was still a kid. A truck had hit him while backing out, and steel beams cut his leg open. It almost left him disabled. That's why he started swimming for rehab, and eventually, he got better. Although it still throbs during bad weather. Looking back, he thinks that it was around that time, when his mother started to become overprotective of him. Shihyeon remembers that he did learn about the accident on Hajun's file, although he didn't realize it was this bad. He also didn't notice during the first night they spent together because it was dark. Anyways, Hajun suddenly tells Shihyeon that he'll just wipe his leg himself. When Shihyeon asks why, he notices that Hajun has become excited, even though he didn't do anything. Hajun pointed out that it was because Shihyeon kept on touching him from a strange angle. Amused that Hajun is daydreaming at such a time, Shihyeon teasingly nibbles on little Hajun and surprises the big one. Shihyeon didn't just stop there, though, as he started to take the little one out, insisting that he's just returning the favor, since he was on the receiving end last time. And so, Shihyeon started servicing Hajun, and although he tried his best, it seems that he's still terrible at doing it. Not that Hajun said anything. Then again, it doesn't really matter, since the face that Shihyeon is making is enough for Hajun to finish. He helped Shihyeon with the task and, in no time, eventually let out the tartar sauce on Shihyeon's face. Amidst his hurting mouth, Shihyeon accuses Hajun of doing it on purpose, although Hajun insists that he didn't, and that Shihyeon is just being reckless. Anyways, Shihyeon says that he only did it because he wanted to do it. After all, it's what Hajun wants himself. Suddenly, Hajun kisses Shihyeon and asks him if he really knows what the young professor wants. Knowing exactly what was going to happen next, the two decided to cut short their dinner and take a taxi home. Later that evening, they were making out in their front yard when Hajun suddenly tells Shihyeon how he feels, like he's becoming a beast hungry for tight bum-bums whenever he touches Shihyeon. Hajun's flushing lover comments on how the young professor is saying things he shouldn't be saying, even his profession. Then again, in all honesty, he also feels the same. The makeout session eventually moved to the bedroom. With Shihyeon lying on the bed, Hajun started playing with his lover's nip-nops. Soon after, Hajun looks at Shihyeon with the face of a man who's desperate to get something for himself. Shihyeon isn't used to receiving such a look while he's under Hajun, though, and so, in one swift move, he had Hajun lying on the bed instead. Not that the latter minded one bit. In fact, Hajun started playing with Shihyeon's nip-nops again, as both of them tried to get each other into their birth suits. Suddenly, Hajun asks Shihyeon to turn around, so he can play with his black hole. Shihyeon tried to resist at first, but Hajun insisted. After all, it's not like it's their first time doing it. Well, since it doesn't look like he will win against Hajun, Shihyeon conceded, although he told Hajun to wear a rubber first. When Hajun didn't say anything, Shihyeon reminded him of their talk about him putting rubbers on. It's obvious that Hajun forgot, or he just didn't want to do so in the first place. Hajun then accuses Shihyeon of not trusting him to keep his word. Although, of course, Shihyeon knew better than to believe him. Hajun put on the rubber, allowing Shihyeon to glance at his lover's sword and be taken aback by its size, wondering if it was bigger than the last time. Anyways, without saying anything else, Hajun starts servicing Shihyeon's black hole. Shihyeon doesn't really like it, but for some reason, it's also making him feel hot. Suddenly, Hajun slaps Shihyeon's bum-bums. The latter was, of course, upset, although Hajun explains that he only did it because Shihyeon's sword is so alert that he can't even play with it. And so he once again tells Shihyeon to get up and change position. With Shihyeon's alert sword now facing him, Hajun starts servicing it. He's so much better at it than Shihyeon that in no time, Shihyeon is about to produce the tartar sauce. He attempts to do it outside, but Hajun won't let him until, eventually, Hajun gulps it all down. Shihyeon still feels so sensitive, but Hajun doesn't even let him recover a bit. To Shihyeon's surprise, Hajun suddenly sheathed his sword inside his black hole without warning. Shihyeon turned up and called Hajun a meanie. Hajun, reflecting on what he did, although not really, tells Shihyeon to stop crying as he wipes his tears. After all, it's making him feel bad for Shihyeon, even though he has no intention of stopping himself. Shihyeon and Hajun are in the middle of doing their bedroom exercise when the latter kisses Shihyeon's head after finishing a round, only to produce another packet of rubber, seeing as it's not the first, nor is it the last round that they will be doing for the night. Shihyeon tries to stop Hajun, although it seems like it's a losing argument again. And so, Shihyeon gives in, but not before asking for them to change their positions first and to free his hand. Once Shihyeon is sitting on Hajun's lap, he also asks him to be in his birth suit as well. When Hajun teases him for being considerate, Shihyeon points out that he just wants to be in direct contact with Hajun. Moved, Hajun did as told without another word, and the two of them started another round of exercise, which mainly consisted of Shihyeon feeling it more than Hajun, it seems. Before Shihyeon knew it, he was lying on the bed again, with Hajun being relentless once again. Shihyeon tries to stop Hajun, saying that it's becoming really uncomfortable for him. But Hajun didn't stop at all, and instead told Shihyeon that he was just being too sensitive. After finishing that round, just when Shihyeon thought it was finally over, he felt Hajun's sword in his black hole, getting alert once again. In fact, Hajun also takes another packet of rubber to wear. Shihyeon tried to dissuade Hajun, but the latter just made many excuses. Shihyeon eventually made a crude joke, making Hajun carefreely laugh for once, which made Shihyeon's heart skip a beat. And since the young professor is actually a smooth talker, he eventually managed to convince Shihyeon that they continue. He promised he'd take it slow this time, and that it'll be the last one. Shihyeon sighs in resignation. After all, it's not the first time that Hajun said that. Then again, he still lets him. Later that night, Hajun and the sleeping Shihyeon are now in each other's arms in the middle of the bed. Hajun plays with Shihyeon's hair as he asks him if he's already asleep. When Shihyeon doesn't respond, Hajun starts talking to him, saying how he used to not feel the slow passing of time when he was at work, but ever since he noticed how Shihyeon was waiting for him to come home, the passing time felt such a drag. Hajun ended his monologue by thanking Shihyeon for being by his side and humming him close. A moment later, Hajun is now asleep. Shihyeon blinks his eyes open and dares to think that perhaps Hajun is really in love with him, and wonders if that's okay, since their future together is still uncertain. Shihyeon knows that he shouldn't catch feelings for Hajun as well, but still, he can't help himself. At the faculty office, Hajun handed some files to his student assistant, which were meant for his third-year students, and gave additional instructions for those who needed extra consultations. It was a typical day for Hajun, although this time it seemed that Yoonjae was also in the office finishing some work. This surprised Hajun, since Yoonjae didn't have classes today. Turns out, Yoonjae is doing errands for the dean. When Hajun realized this, he took some of the files that Yoonjae was supposed to work on and offered his help. Yoonjae was reluctant to accept it, although Hajun insisted, since he was really not that busy. Anyways, as they did the paperwork, Hajun couldn't help but nag about how Yoonjae was being taken advantage of by the dean, pointing out that the older man talked Yoonjae into doing those errands in exchange for extending his contract. That said, Hajun promised to speak to the dean about it personally. Yoonjae tried to talk Hajun out of it, insisting that the latter's help now was already more than enough. After all, he knows how busy Hajun is, especially since he'll be a full-time professor by next year. Hajun suddenly glances at his phone and remembers his conversation with Shihyeon earlier that day when he dropped him a few blocks away from the university. Hajun had wanted to drop him somewhere nearer, But Shihyeon insisted that he enjoyed the walk to the university from there, not to mention someone might see them getting out of the car together. Shortly after, Shihyeon bid Hajun goodbye, promising to message him at lunch. As Hajun busied himself with the errand, his mind was actually filled with thoughts of Shihyeon. He had wanted to call him, but worried that his lover might be busy. He also wonders how Shihyeon might be feeling, since he knew he had been a bit overboard last night. Usually, when they spend a night like that together, Shihyeon takes a day off the following day. Even though Shihyeon is obviously fine the next day, he's still using their previous night's bedroom activities as an excuse to laze around, not to mention demanding trivial things out of him and acting spoiled. Hajun was in such deep thought that he didn't notice Yoonjae approached him to ask for some advice on the documents he was working on. Noticing Hajun's bright aura, Yoonjae asks his friend if he's okay, since he's been more cheerful nowadays. Just then, Hajun remembered that Professor Cha had also commented about the changes in the air around him and wondered if they really showed on his face. Hajun was just about to admit it, but then he suddenly remembered the crying little boy from when they were just kids and how the adults said that the boy couldn't give testimonies due to shock. He couldn't even remember what happened, which was probably his defense mechanism since he was just a little boy, just like how Hajun also forgot the little boy's name. And just like that, Hajun brushes off the matter. Meanwhile, somewhere in the school grounds, Luno and Shihyeon are talking about the voicemail from the phone. Shihyeon is obviously very concerned about Hajun's safety, not to mention the fact that Hajun's dad might already know about Vulture. But Uno seems indifferent about it. Since the voicemail never got sent in the first place, then that might not be the case anymore. Their conversation is held to a pause when some students call out to Uno. The first group of students are girls, who thank Uno for helping them pick their swimsuits. The next one is a group of athletes, who invite Uno to play basketball with them later tonight, which the substitute professor declines since he's got stuff to do, and instead promises to play with them tomorrow. With how close Uno is to his students, Shihyeon wonders if he has already crossed the line and actually touched one of them. When Uno tries to joke about it, Shihyeon is quick to grab his collar in anger. Uno quickly takes back his words and assures Shihyeon that he would do anything that might pose a problem in doing his job. In Uno's defense, he's just doing his best to get close to the students since they're a reliable source of useful information. He advises Shihyeon to do the same instead of being chummy only with the cleaning ladies, but Shihyeon brushes off the advice. Anyways, Uno notices that Shihyeon is wearing a turtleneck sweatshirt today, which covers a lot of his skin. Knowing exactly what Uno is getting at, Shihyeon tells him that he didn't wear the sweatshirt for Uno's sake. With that, Shihyeon tries to leave first since he's already done talking with Uno, although not before informing Uno that he'll make the report to the headquarters after he goes to the presentation in a few days. Suddenly, Uno calls out to Shihyeon and comments how he walks differently the next day after he does the humpy-pumpy the previous night. Shihyeon didn't say anything, although he did give Uno the finger before walking away again. Uno had a bittersweet smile on his face, concluding that Shihyeon had, in fact, slept with Hajun the previous night, and that he's not even denying it. Oi, there, big guy. Anyways, Shihyeon went about his day and did his job, although his thoughts still wandered about why Professor Park left the phone, even though he knew he'd be tracked down. That said, Shihyeon came to the conclusion that, perhaps, it was deliberately left behind, to be discovered. Shihyeon might be in deep thought, but it still didn't stop him from sensing the approaching person from behind him. He was on such high alert that he almost attacked the person, who turned out to be a student, and so, Shihyeon awkwardly made an excuse that he was just getting rid of some bug. Anyways, Shihyeon asks her what she's doing there when she could have just called him over if there's something that needs cleaning. The student, who turns out to be the young lady he saved from chapters 9 and 10, offers him a canned drink as a thanks. It was a gesture long overdue, which she wasn't able to do earlier because of how shocked she was at that time. In fact, she would also like to buy him dinner. As much as Shihyeon would like to have that dinner, he remembers how Umino got all chummy with the students just like this. Not wanting to do the same things as Umino does, Shihyeon instead asks the student to just give him a 5-star review on the next employee performance survey. The student agrees. Shortly after, the two of them formally introduced themselves and found out that they had the same family names. The student, whose name is Mina, even starts calling him Oppa. Meanwhile, not far from where the two are, the F-tard student from Chapter 11 notices them and curses at Shihyeon in his head. The said student, whose name is Songyu, says that he's going to mess with Shihyeon. When his friend asks him what he plans on doing, "I smell trouble." Later that day, Shihyeon whistled after he had finished cleaning the lecture hall. He was thinking about emptying the bins in the toilet before he reported to the chief when someone suddenly kicked the plastic bag of trash he had collected from the hall. That action resulted in a bunch of the trash being scattered around on the already cleaned floor. The culprit is the F-tard Songyu. Here act on his words from the previous chapter. He sarcastically apologizes, but blames Shihyeon nonetheless for putting the plastic in his way. Although taken aback, Shihyeon didn't make a big deal out of it. He remembered who they were, of course, but since the presentation was only a few days away, he didn't want to jeopardize his cover in any way. And so, Shihyeon was just about to timidly deal with the scattered trash when Songyu suddenly kicked him. This made Shihyeon lose his balance. Suddenly, he found himself in all four on the floor, with the F-tard commenting that Shihyeon was being disrespectful. Even though he was just a janitor, the F-tard even had the audacity to complain about his shoes getting dirty from all the trash that he himself scattered. Obviously, having a good education doesn't equal to having good manners. The F-tard grabs onto Shihyeon's vest as he tries to intimidate him into compensating for his ruined shoes, and even attempts to get Shihyeon's company involved. Shihyeon would have probably still let it go even then. But then the F-tard made a big mistake when he mentioned how the previous cleaning lady started begging him when she was put in the same situation. And so, Shihyeon decided that this F-tard was a lost cause, and without warning, he slapped the F-tard's hand away. This irritated the F-tard, of course, although this time, Shihyeon wasn't going to back down anymore. Shihyeon sighed internally, reflecting on how he didn't want to raise his hand against a civilian, but was given no choice. Our undercover agent grabs his broom and uses the handle to smack Songyu's knee and flings him over to the floor. In quick succession, he also effortlessly hits the other two students who attempt to attack him. Songyu is the one to recover first and staggers as he stands up. Meanwhile, Shihyeon tells him that he can report Shihyeon if he wants. But since the F-tard was the one who attacked first, Shihyeon won't go easy on him anymore. Although he still gives the student a chance to walk away. Despite obviously being disadvantaged, the F-tard didn't back down, and instead tried to attack Shihyeon again. Anyways, Shihyeon prepares himself for the attack. That's when Yoonjae walks by together with Hajun, who is looking at his phone, as if upset that someone hasn't been reading his messages. Yoonjae tries to stop the student, but then trips to the hand of another student, who is still sprawled on the floor. This accident resulted in Yoonjae letting go of the book he was holding, which was about to hit Songyu. Shihyeon was quick to realize that the book would be fatal if it hit an ordinary person. It's not that he's concerned about the F-tard's well-being, but then Shihyeon also doesn't want to get mixed up with the trouble this incident might cause. And so, Shihyeon grabs the F-tard to safety and lets himself be hit by the book instead. It was so thick that Shihyeon shortly fainted. By the time Shihyeon gained consciousness, Hajun was in front of him and anxiously called his name again and again. Shihyeon then asks Hajun how long he has been out. Hajun responded that he'd been unconscious for about 10 minutes and proceeded to call an ambulance. Shihyeon tells him that there is no need for that, although Hajun obviously thinks otherwise. Shortly after, Yoonjae came running towards Shihyeon as he apologized for what happened. After all, it really was his fault. Anyways, Yoonjae was just about to wipe Shihyeon's forehead with an ice pack when the latter noticed the scar on Yoonjae's arm and grabbed it for a closer look. That was when Shihyeon realized that Yoonjae was the boy with young Hajun in the photo. Going back to memory lane and continuing that scene from chapter 31, back when Hajun and Yoonjae first met in high school, Yoonjae was following Hajun as he blabbered about how it's been a while since he came back to that school. In fact, he never thought he'd be attending it again, and explains how he used to live in the neighborhood. And blah, blah. The irritated Hajun was just about to tell Yoon-jae off when he suddenly saw the scar on his arm. And instead, Hajun asks him about his name. The surprised Yoon-jae eventually told Hajun. Continuing that memory from chapter 35, back when young Hajun suddenly left the young boy in the park. He actually saw how the young boy was eventually found by his very upset mother, who calls him Yoon-jae, a name that stuck onto the young Hajun's memory preciously. Well, what do you know? Looks like a mix-up happened somewhere. Shihyeon gets up from the couch she's resting in and spies on Hajun and Yoon-jae talking in the adjacent room. He saw Hajun give Yoon-jae a carefree smile that made him unknowingly feel jealous, as Hajun's smile wasn't exclusive to him at all. It's all right, Candy, you're still the only one for him. Anyways, without notice, someone suddenly whooshed past Hajun and Yoon-jae and headed straight to the room where Shihyeon was. It was Uno who sent Shihyeon to the floor. When he suddenly opened the door, Shihyeon was leaning in. Worry was written all over Uno's face as he asked Shihyeon what had happened and if it was anything related to their work. As Uno helps Shihyeon to his feet, the latter explains that it was just some skirmish with one of the students. As the two of them chatted, Uno was being too familiar with Shihyeon, making Hajun upset. So he walks up to them and tells Shihyeon that he has already informed his boss of what happened. Hajun also tells Shihyeon that he'll grab his things and drop him off to see a doctor. But Uno, being Uno, saw an opportunity. Uno reminds Hajun that he still has a lecture to teach in the afternoon. Uno volunteered to drop Shihyeon off at the hospital so Hajun could prepare for his class. But, of course, Hajun isn't going to back down that easily. Then again, neither does Uno. As if adding fuel to the fire, Uno even put his arm around Shihyeon, much to Shihyeon's confusion and Hajun's annoyance. Hajun then points out that since Shihyeon lies in his place, it's only natural that he's the one to take him to the doctor. As it so happens, Yoon-jae chooses that exact moment to join them in the room and hears what Hajun just said, which is news to him. Hajun looked like he was caught doing something he shouldn't have and wasn't able to answer immediately. Even Shihyeon noticed Hajun's reluctance, and so he took it upon himself to explain the situation. He tells Yoon-jae how he had been renting a room at Hajun's place after an accident had happened at his last place. Shihyeon even addresses Hajun formally, thanking him for his help and asking him to go to his class. Without really letting Hajun have a say in it, Shihyeon pushes Uno out of the room. On their way out, Shihyeon tells the professor that they'll catch up later at the house and assures him that he'll get himself checked out with a doctor. On their way out of the building, Shihyeon complains to Uno for complicating things and for looking happy, even though he's not the one who's going to deal with the mess he caused. Too bad. Uno doesn't look like he's reflecting on his actions at all. Anyways, Uno arranges a taxi for Shihyeon since he's in no condition to ride on his motorcycle. Shihyeon then tells Uno that he doesn't need to see a doctor since he's not even that hurt. Instead, he wants to see Shadow since he has questions for him, like Hajun's past records and Yoon-jae's history, which were uncovered by the files given to him, and also about the relationship of the scars in their bodies, as well as where the two of them first met, not to mention where the photo they had together as kids was taken. Full-on jealous boyfriend mode on. As Shihyeon and Uno waited for the taxi to arrive, Shihyeon tried to ask Uno about his dilemma, about whether keeping a photo with sentimental value would also mean that the person in it is precious to the one who keeps it. Although it's obvious that it was a serious question, Uno just responded in a very Uno-like way, which made Shihyeon regret asking him. Shortly after, Shihyeon's ride arrived, and they parted ways. Later at night, Shihyeon arrived home late. He was surprised to see that Hajun had been waiting for him all this time and immediately apologized. Shihyeon explained that there were many people in the hospital and it took him a while, and that he only had a light bruise and was advised to apply an ice pack to it, all of which Shihyeon had already conveyed to Hajun through text message. Shihyeon acted normally, as if nothing was wrong at all. But it seems like that isn't the case for Hajun, whose first words to Shihyeon since his arrival as if he was with Uno all this time. What's more, he accuses Shihyeon of trusting Uno more than he trusts Hajun. Well, they did know each other longer. Shihyeon explained that he simply didn't want Hajun to cancel his lecture, and only accepted Uno's offer because he said he was on his way home. Hajun then pointed out that he already said it was okay to cancel his lecture, and yet Shihyeon still insisted on going with a man he once had an affair with. Hajun even went as far as accusing Shihyeon of still having feelings for Uno. Sheesh, Uno would have a field day if he heard this. Anyways, Hajun's accusations are below the belt, which made Shihyeon upset since Hajun brought it up once again, when he had already told him that he was not seeing him anymore. Shihyeon also points out that it's not like he needs to report everything that happened between him and Uno and Hajun. The way Hajun sees it, though, is that Shihyeon is just making excuses and insists that if there really isn't anything to hide, then Shihyeon should just tell Hajun everything. Shihyeon once again tries to get Hajun off his back. After all, it's not like either of them is actually trying to have an affair. Shihyeon then remembers the photo that Hajun kept preciously and tells Hajun that he has no right to demand transparency, when Hajun himself isn't telling Shihyeon everything either. For what it's worth, it seems like both of them are taken aback by what Shihyeon said. One morning, Hajun stands in front of Shihyeon's room, reluctant to knock on the door. He remembers that night when the two of them had their first big fight. After Shihyeon's outburst, he excused himself, saying that his head hurts, so he'll just go rest to his room. And ever since, the two of them hadn't talked to each other. Gathering his courage, Hajun finally managed to knock on the door. Without waiting for Shihyeon's response, Hajun invited himself in and asked Shihyeon if he was ready to go to work. To his surprise, though, Shihyeon is wearing his Men in Black suit. Shihyeon informs Hajun that he won't be going to work today and explains that a friend of his got injured, so he's going to visit him, and that he had also already informed his work about it. Hajun blushes a bit when he sees Shihyeon in a suit and helps him fix his tie. He compliments Shihyeon on how the suit looks good on him, almost as if it was tailored for him. Shihyeon indifferently responds that it is indeed tailored for him, although that's not exactly what Hajun was pointing out. Anyways, Hajun offers to give Shihyeon a ride, but the latter declines. Shihyeon explains that the place is in the opposite direction of the school, so he'll be taking the train. He also adds that since it's been a while since they hadn't seen each other, he'll be late to get home later, as they might go drinking together. Shihyeon turns to Hajun as if he's about to say something, but all of it he only managed to ask inside his head. But whether he will still be able to come back here after the day is over. Can he still return to Hajun's side and talk about what happened to his day as usual, and if they can still spend their life together as they have been doing? Of course, neither Hajun nor Shihyeon could be certain of the answers to those questions. So, Shihyeon chose to keep them to himself and instead tells Hajun to have a great day at work. Probably feeling like something might happen, Hajun suddenly grabs Shihyeon's arm and asks him if the latter can send him voicemails or text messages throughout the day. Although there was uncertainty in his voice, Shihyeon agreed. Later that day, Shihyeon was inside a very tall building and tapped away on his laptop. The location is pretty far from the metropolitan area and is in the middle of nowhere, so Shihyeon couldn't help but wonder if Professor Park had chosen the venue on purpose. Despite being in the middle of a mission, Shihyeon's thoughts still linger on Hajun. He remembers the conversation he had with Shadow the last time he went to see him. Shadow told him the information he had gathered regarding the accident that Hajun had when he was just 7 years old. The accident also involved another kid, although the latter was discharged earlier since he only got minor injuries. Shadow had his guesses on who the other kid might be, but Shihyeon tried to shake the thoughts away. After all, he has to focus on his mission right now. To distract himself from the distracting thoughts, Shihyeon goes back to his laptop and reviews the data about the mission. The one hosting the conference is a new material venture company based in the United Kingdom that was listed as a subsidiary about 6 months ago. Hajun's father, Professor Park, is listed as the lead researcher, while maintaining his status as a professor at Wugang University. The company's president and chief technology officer are British and have little to no connection to South America. And yet, based on the gathered data, they had a close enough relationship that they joined hands in the venture and even provided a factory for it. Although the main objective is probably for investments, Shihyeon concluded that it's not the real objective of the conference. Shortly after, Shihyeon decided that it was about time for him to go to the conference venue. On his way there, he noticed that most of the guests were foreigners and that there was no sign of the professor, although it could also be because they used a proxy for him. That said, it's almost time for the conference to start, but Shihyeon has yet to see the organizers of the event. When Shihyeon was queuing for a ride on the elevator to his floor, someone bumped into him. It seems like Shihyeon had felt something from the contact because, for some reason, it made him alert. He then started conversing with the culprit by asking where he was from. The latter tried to respond with safe replies, but when he tried to cut short their conversation and leave, Shihyeon stopped him. Shihyeon then expertly points out that the man is either carrying a machine pistol or an SMG. Shihyeon then criticizes the man for failing as a hitman, if he thinks he actually managed to execute his cover well. Now he's acting more like a star agent. Anyways, without another word, Shihyeon grabbed the man's ID cord and caused him to lose his balance, falling to the floor. Soon after, the elevator door opened and a couple of other men opened fire at Shihyeon. Although he managed to dodge the first bang, it seems like the man he had subdued earlier wasn't totally out of it because he managed to kick Shihyeon to the wall. That's when Shihyeon realized that the traces that were left by the professor were actually to set a trap, which he is now currently caught. Meanwhile, a man is talking to someone on the phone, giving them instructions on how to dispose of some people, and there's no need to capture them to get information. After all, if he really did need information, he would have hired professionals instead of second-rate thugs. The man also added that no one should be left alive if their face ID doesn't match, because if they don't, they're probably a spy agent or a hitman and are bound to be his enemies. Shihyeon quickly gained his momentum and fended off his attackers. He also took out his bang bang and fired it on the incoming men, who were just a second late firing their own. After kicking one of them in the neck, Shihyeon fired his bang bang again on another group until he ran out of ammo. Shihyeon then threw the unloaded bang bang upward and punched another attacker in the face. Taking another magazine under his suit, Shihyeon loaded it onto the bang bang from earlier and once again started firing at his enemies. After hiding in a corner, he took out a flash boom hidden under his pants and threw it to those in his trail. Our cornered agent then uses the opportunity to get himself out of the building by breaking the glass wall, not knowing that a few other hitmen were already waiting for him outside. Fortunately, a sniper has his back to cover him. Shihyeon has no idea who this sniper is or whether he is an enemy or an ally. Turns out, the sniper was Uno, and Shihyeon was right to wonder if he was an enemy or an ally, since it seems that Uno had been trying to warn him against coming to this conference all this time. Very sus indeed. Meanwhile, Shihyeon managed to reach the freeway in his car. For some reason, no one is following him, and he does not hear any bang bangs being fired. Shihyeon then contacts his boss to report that it was a trap and remote deletion of the files from his laptop is requested, since retrieving them might be impossible. Looking back, Shihyeon realized that all those clues left for them to find were meant to lure agents like him. That way, they would all be taken care of in one go at the conference, and since he was the last one to come up from the lobby, all the other targets would have been taken care of on the above floors. That said, the professor seems more cunning than they thought, and they need a more detailed plan if they want to catch him alive. With adrenaline still pumping throughout his veins, he felt uncomfortable since it had been a while since he'd been on the field. The first thing that came to his mind was to go home and then assess his next moves. At that moment, Shihyeon caught himself. Unknowingly, it had become natural for him to consider Hajun's house his home, as if it were the most natural thing in the world for him now. Reflecting on this realization, all Shihyeon could think about while driving was Hajun and how he missed him and wanted to see him again. When Shihyeon arrived in their neighborhood, it was already quite late. He then noticed Hajun's car, which looked like it had just arrived as well in front of his house. As Shihyeon wondered where Hajun might have gone, He noticed Yoon-jae get out of the car with Hajun. The two of them were then talking, although Shihyeon couldn't make out what it was about. Suddenly, Yoon-jae looked like he was crying and Hajun hugged him. The moment Shihyeon saw that scene, he remembered Hajun's words when he described Yoon-jae as someone who made him feel calm and relaxed. Reality hit Shihyeon then, as he thought about how he should have paid more attention to Hajun's words and actions before. If he had, he would have realized much earlier that all this time, Hajun had never once referred to Yoon-jae as just a friend.